Welcome to the latest episode of The Independent. I'm Pete Sampson, joined as always by my host Matt Fortuna. Today on the show, we look back at Texas A&M a little bit, look ahead toward Purdue. We also have a special guest, Ivan Maisel, one of the all-time great college football journalists, has a new book out, This American Coach. It is a profile of Frank Leahy, which is pretty fascinating to read, and I learned a lot. So we'll talk to Ivan about putting that book together, what he learned about Frank Leahy, and also his position on the College Football Playoff Committee, which, you know, if all things goes to plans, like he will have to recuse himself on Notre Dame later. But at 0-2, that feels like a bit of a stretch here on September 17th.
Saying that feels like a bit of a stretch early on after the first home game with a big game against Purdue coming up. I feel like we've been here before, Pete. I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't write things off all that quickly.
No, we shouldn't. Before we get into that, we want to thank our newest sponsor, Fortuna and Pete. As a parent of two kids and youth sports, putting together dinner is a little bit complicated in my house. So Home Run in Pizza makes that easy. Nutritious, delicious pizza, ready in minutes. It is a friend of the pod and also a friend of my freezer.
Yeah, Pete, at the end of a full day of college football where I forget to eat because I'm watching every game and covering them too, I could house an entire Home Run in Pizza all by myself. You grab it out of the freezer and in no time catch up on what you should have been eating during halftime. Fun fact, Home Run In is actually the original tavern-style pizza, the OG of cutting pizza into squares, real Chicago tavern style. Thank you to our friends at Home Run In Pizza.
All right, so I guess before we get into Purdue, and we'll do predictions in segment 3 after our interview with Ivan, now that we're not podcasting immediately after the game and listening to a Texas A&M tailgate blaring in the parking lot, do you feel any differently about the A&M performance than you did as it was happening right in front of us?
The performance itself, no, I don't. My interpretation of what this all means, maybe.
Okay.
Spoken to a lot of people in the last 72 hours or so. And one of the themes I've got, and I don't know if it's been conveyed to you the same way, was like, yeah, you guys really overrated this team. Like, we lost a ton on that side of the ball. It's not all Chris Ash's fault. Like, you know, the D tackles are nowhere near what they were last year. The linebackers are good. They're not great. The secondary outside of Leonard Moore right now is nothing to write home about. You know, Bryce Young, is he out of position now? I don't know. He put on like 30 pounds in the offseason. Should be playing inside where they could definitely use some help right now. I don't know. I mean, I think that's in some ways a convenient way of looking at it. But, you know, I look at this schedule and what's left. I look at the talent that's on this roster, however good or bad it may be, however overrated or underrated it may be. And I think, you know, this is a team that will be favored in every game and should still win every game. Now, it's not nearly that easy. There are way too many busts and way too much confusion on the defensive side of the ball for me to have faith that these guys are going to magically fix it overnight. I think it's going to be a process like it was last year on the other side of the ball. But I will say that, like, knowing what we now know, like with certainty about CJ Carr and tipping plays, I'm very excited about this offense, assuming they can fix that. And they're not playing the Mike Elko defense anymore.
Yeah, I would definitely call BS on the overrating of the defensive talent. And I'm not only in the sense of like, if we overrated it, Marcus Freeman overrated it, Chris Ash overrated it, like the entire program overrated it. I did have one cautionary tale before the season started was somebody was like, look, these defensive tackles they're just guys.
I've gotten that phrase, just guys, about a number of position groups on that roster this week. So, and it's like, well, some of them are
tackle, I believe
guys are captains. Okay, they can't be just guys at captains.
No, I don't buy it at linebacker. I certainly don't buy it at corner. I don't even buy it at safety. Defensive end are not just guys, but defensive tackles are just guys. And yet Marcus Freeman I think his last media availability was like, no position has moved forward farther. Like Jason Onis is playing as well as any D tackle I've had here. And I'm like, all right, dude. Like, I'm not buying this, but I would like to think that Freeman isn't getting up there and giving essentially a pump-up speech in a press conference because he needs the defensive tackles to think they're actually good when they know that they're not. if you said the defensive tackles are just guys, fine. The rest of the defensive roster, no, I completely disagree with that.
So, one, not that I expect this to happen. I don't think there's going to be any major changes defensively as far as play calling, at least not this week. Two, you mentioned Marcus Freeman on Monday. The part that caught my attention more than anything else, and we all know how like savvy and well-spoken he is. The most flummox I think I've seen him in 4 years is when Tim O'Malley said, "What did you like about the defense?" And
Oh,
he
yeah.
just stumbled over him. I mean, it was like, I'm focused on the negatives, like, which he never is focused on negatives. He's always focused on the positive. Like, that to me was like the most telling moment of truth from anything we've seen through 2 weeks of Notre Dame football so far.
That, I mean, it's one that was super interesting. It did take me back to like watching film with him in the summer, because that's how he is when he's watching film by himself. He does not give a crap about what went right. It's like what went wrong and why, and how do we make sure it doesn't go wrong again. But I'm with you. Like the fact that he was like, either I can't think of a single thing, or I don't want to say a single thing, because then that person is going to be like, I'm great, even though this defense is bad. Because there are, like, if you got up there and be like, I really like what Kingston Viliamas is doing. Love where Leonard Moore's game is. I don't think that would necessarily like upset the apple cart, but like there's, he said, he did say Tay Johnson is somebody who I think is coming along. Definitely not just a guy when you watch him play. So I thought it was interesting. I thought the most interesting thing was like, he is so reluctant to criticize coaches that when we kind of boxed him into a corner about, look, I asked him post game, like, do you need to call the defense? Like, and he's like, I don't want to do that. And yet, when it came to like, do you need to spend more time in the defensive meeting room? He's like, kind of gave a generic, like, you're the head coach, you got to wear the hats. This is necessarily yada, yada, yada. Also, maybe I will be spending more time in the defensive meeting room, which like, that's 100% what he needs to do. There's no, I mean, what's he going to go into the offensive meeting room and be like, hey, could we throw more of those great CJ Carr passes to Malachi Fields? Let's keep giving the ball to Jeremiah Love. Okay, I'm good. I'm just going back to my head coach's office now. Like, the defense has to do less and figure out who they're going to do less with. And are there going to be major changes? I don't think so, but I do think, like I was told, like Carson Hobbs isn't playing nickel anymore. He's moving a corner. I think Bronte Johnson is going to play a ton more than Jalen Stroman does. But I think there are some people who are like, well, should they bench Christian Gray? No. Like,
no.
That's the one on top of, that's not the one. The defensive tackles were a concern going into the season, but the bigger one that I heard was like, we have no depth at corner. Like we fall off a cliff after Moore and Gray at the outside position. So there's not a cavalry there coming in to save you if you're Notre Dame. Like you gotta roll with Moore and Gray. Both of them are banged up, but both those guys are the best options of those positions.
That part to me is disappointing because of how well Mike Mickens has coached and recruited that position through his time at Notre Dame, and for all the groundswell, mostly external support he had to become a DC or take on a bigger role in this defense. Like, to me, that part is very disappointing. I don't think Christian Gray forgot how to play football overnight, although like it's given me horror flashbacks to another guy with the same last name who played that position.
I just like, don't you watch? Like, I know people think about the Craver touchdown and Gray looks like he's like, I don't want to tackle this dude at all. But then like later in the game, he just puts his left arm out and he's in agony on the ground with a shoulder injury. Like he's trying, it seems like to me, like he's a player that is trying to protect himself because that's what Notre Dame needs him to do.
Probably. And, he took the shot in week 1 too, right? Was it the neck or the throat with Miami?
Yeah. Good point.
Play he misses, they give up a touchdown. So that part's definitely worth keeping on. By the way, Leonard Moore's on the injury report. I don't believe injury reports from anybody. I just think they're like, hey, we're aware of gambling, and like they don't actually do anything. But do you think he's not going to play?
No, not right now. I mean,
you think he will play?
Yeah, I think if they were playing Tennessee State, yeah, then maybe you could.
Tennessee
But you're
State.
oh,
Well,
you're
Tennessee State is
0-2.
probably better than last year's version of Purdue.
Yeah,
At 0-2.
this version of Purdue is like actually okay. Like,
You know who their starting left tackle is?
I do not.
Joey Tonona.
Oh, yeah, good for him. Zionsville's finest, right there.
First time playing in Notre Dame Stadium.
Yeah, I just look at Purdue and like they're competent. Like
They're
they're
well
probably
coached.
4-8, but whatever. I mean, that is a million miles away from 1-11. So I just think like this is a good weekend to like, hey, how do you play cover 2 the best? Let's do that. Let's play cover 2 today. Like, let's not have whiz bang adjustments and like safeties rolling and like you got 3 zone defenders on a side of the field where there are no wide receivers. Like, let's less of that. Like maybe some press coverage too. Like, stop giving receivers free releases all the time. So I think it's a good sort of weekend where the defense can kind of get right on some things by doing less and maybe picking better players to do it. But I think it is the issues with Notre Dame's defense, I think, have way more to do with how it's being called than the players who are out there actually trying to play.
I agree too. I mean, we went over this in the post-game pod Saturday night, but like it could have been worse, right? Like A&M receivers were running free all night long. Marcel Reed did not hit them every time. Friend of the show, Tim Murray, joked both on his pod and I think with us on text, like, yeah, Freeman should have declined the hold penalty on the kickoff return because they couldn't stop us either, and we could have had the ball last and scored. And like obviously he's joking, but like the fact he's saying that even in a joking manner tells you about the state of things right now.
Yeah,
but it does make me
right now.
It does make me very encouraged for the offense. I mean, they had their way with A&M in the second half. A&M, I think me and you knew what was coming anytime in real time. They lined up in Wildcat. However, outside of Wildcat, when CJ Carr was stepping back, A&M knew when it was going to be a run or a pass. They still, I think, did a good job of running the ball and not giving up on the run and wearing that defense out over the course of fourth quarters. Obviously, you need more from your receivers. But yeah, part of me says, well, you're not going to play a defense nearly as talented as A&M the rest of the way, but A&M's defense didn't exactly light the world on fire against Notre Dame this week. So,
or
I don't know.
Or Utah State.
No, they didn't. And, who's the best defense there? Is Arkansas? I don't know. Arkansas's offense would worry me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm worried about Arkansas's defense just yet. Same with USC. The receivers worry me. I'm not worried about their defense just yet, but where are those spots in the schedule? Pat Narduzzi, right? Pat Pitt? I don't know. Probably not.
NC State seems legit.
Yeah, that's fair. At least on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, Boise State, no. Purdue, no. But 3 of the next 5 opponents are like, if you mess around, you could find out.
Well, let me put you this way. Do you think Miami can win a national championship this year?
Oh, man.
I mean, they look amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I don't trust them because I never trust them, but like.
I mean, I don't know. I guess they could. Like, technically, yes. They're going to make the playoffs, so they could win a national championship. Like, I think they're in the conversation, not as a favorite, but maybe similar to Notre Dame last year. Like, I don't think people looked at Notre Dame when the playoffs started and be like, could they? Yeah, like technically they could.
I feel like a lot of people had them getting to the title game once that bracket came out.
They were would as many people had them getting the title game if Carson Beck wasn't hurt? Definitely not.
Fair.
I mean, I
don't think it would have mattered personally, but yeah.
Yeah, they got a good draw and they took advantage of it. So more power to them for that. But I would say, Miami going into the playoff this year probably will feel similar-ish to Notre Dame last year, where you're like, I kind of like there's something about them that I like, but they're not like an overwhelming favorite.
They'll lose a game they shouldn't, is what you're saying, and we'll forget about it.
I mean, they're definitely along the way. They will drop a game to somebody.
Maybe this week. I think Florida's a lot more talented than they've played so far.
Could be. Could be.
Nicely. Similar question for A&M, because I don't think that's a national title contender. However, you look at that schedule, they're going to be favored in every game except for at LSU and at Texas.
Which
you lose just 2 games.
Are you sure they're not going to be favored at Texas?
Yeah, fair. That's fair. I mean, 6-2 most years will get you into the SEC title game.
Yeah, I
Therefore,
feel
you're in
like
the
they are
playoff.
going like that's going to be a 10-2 team that makes the playoff.
Yeah, if they go to, and they got to get a lot better too. I mean, if Reed makes the improvements that he needs to make, and the moxie's there, the poise is there, the accuracy isn't always. I think that's a team to be reckoned with down the stretch. Maybe not to the extent that Miami is, but I say it all to say like Notre Dame was 4 points away from total in both games. And yet, I don't know. I still like the way they play defensively. It's still very, very discouraging.
Yeah, it's like Reed. I feel like is not going to last the season. Unfortunately, I think
You're saying the SEC defense lines will put more pressure on him than Notre Dame did.
I mean, he got knocked out of the game against Utah State. He was struggling against Notre Dame at times. Like it's hard for me to see him surviving the season. Super fun player to watch, but doesn't I would trust Miami a lot more than I would trust A&M, but I think A&M is good. Like I don't think they're going to go 5-3 in conference, right? Like, and if they go 6-2, they're in the playoff.
Yeah. Do you think they will go 6-2 or no?
I do.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know if there's anybody in the SEC that I actually trust right now.
No, there's no one I trust in the SEC, but I do think like when you see Mississippi State, a team that went winless in conference play last year, beat the Big 12 champion.
Yeah.
Like Vanderbilt is a team to be reckoned with right now. Like,
no, I do trust Vanderbilt. I think that
I don't think there are any bad teams in the SEC this year.
Yeah,
and
that's
that
an
makes it
interesting
tricky.
point. More of a level field
Like
playing
Florida's
conference.
technically bad, but they've got good players.
Yeah.
By the way, can we, as long as we're talking about the SEC, can we talk about our old friend Saturday night, Brian
Clark?
That one too. Brian Kelly.
You said friend. I was confused. I didn't know you were being sarcastic. Yeah, no, that was a good time. That was probably one of the bright spots of the entire evening.
And the non-apology Monday.
I wanted to text Lake and Littman and see how she was doing about it. That was definitely was a throwback to post Notre Dame press conferences sometimes where.
But it was like this one was different. And it's funny. Like I had the game on my iPad, but I wasn't paying attention to it, so I didn't really realize like, wait, they picked him off 5 times and they only scored 20 points.
Yeah.
And by the way, that Clemson win, like, good for you, but it doesn't.
It was like the Michigan game in 2012.
Yeah, Denard. Yeah. Hey, that team went to the national title game. Maybe LSU will this year too. But like the whole like you're spoiled. What do you say? You're a spoiled bunch of reporters. Like,
yeah.
Well, you said you wanted to play in the AL East. Yep. You think New York and Boston media are going to take it easy on you?
I think he was expecting more of like the Tampa Bay Tribune media. I'm not really sure. But it felt like kind of the performative Brian Kelly.
I don't think that was performative. I think that was like.
Oh, you think it was just going off?
Oh, I think he was going off.
Yeah. Okay, you might be right. I just wanted to reference "I'm so angry" slamming the table.
That was performative.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I don't think Saturday was performative. I think he's a little overwhelmed right now. I think he's got a lot of talent on that offense. They haven't figured a damn thing out through 3 games yet, and eventually that could come home to roost.
Not to make this a LSU show, but I was texting with somebody who was texting with him, and he said that BK is actually loving it this season. Like he's just having a great time. Like
clearly,
yeah, he's having a good time down there. But yet it was just a reminder about why this sport is so crazy and drunk and amazing all at the same time, which might be a good segue into our interview with Ivan Maisel, because I think if you read American Coach, and I would highly recommend it, it's a history book that does not read like a history book at all. There are a lot of interesting parts in it that remind you of like this sport has been insane and bananas for its entire existence. And for all the people who say like this sport's changed and I can't get on board with the new college football, like you ain't seen nothing going back to like what this thing used to be. So it was, American Coach, a great read. Let's get to our interview with Ivan Maisel on researching Frank Leahy and a little bit about the College Football Playoff Committee. All right, pleased to be welcomed into the show, Ivan Maisel. You recognize him if you follow college football over the last 30 plus years. One of the all-time greats, and we're happy to have him on to talk about a book that is coming out this week. American Coach. It's a profile biography of Frank Leahy. Fascinating look at, and I guess this is kind of where I want to start, Ivan. Like, a coach that, while is really renowned, is sort of like the guy after the guy around Notre Dame. And I thought that was a really interesting sort of place for you to start with Frank Leahy. What sort of drove that as like, this is the crux of the book and why he's interesting?
Well, originally it kind of just dawned on me, nobody had made a movie about him. I mean, I think you can draw, and I say that only, half kiddingly, Pete. Rockne is Rockne, and he's an iconic figure, and the president played him in the movie, and he's on a postage stamp, and on and on and on and on and on. Leahy's record is virtually identical to Rockne's against the tougher schedule, and he's just completely forgotten. And that was sort of intrigued me, and I started down the path, and then it just got more and more interesting, and I just said, I'm in. And I really think you can make the case that Leahy is the coach who made Notre Dame, in the sense that if Rockne had been the only guy to have that level of success, we would remember Rockne more than we would think about Notre Dame. And, there was 10 years between Rockne and Leahy, and we all know as a college football fan how long 10 years can be. Not that, Hunk Anderson didn't work out as a head coach. Elmer Layden did a good job, but he didn't get over the Rockne hump, the Rockne hurdle. And Leahy, boom, like that. He got there in 41. They won the national championship in 43. He goes to the Navy for 2 years, and then they won it 3 of the following 4 years. So pretty good.
The book is called American Coach, The Triumph and Tragedy of Notre Dame Legend Frank Leahy. Today is the release date. It is the #1 new release in football coaching on Amazon. I believe you also, your publicist said she sent me one and I never got it. So I emailed her yesterday to send me another copy.
Right. Okay. Super.
I believe you also just released a book either with Scott Cochran or you helped him with it about a month ago as well. So, yes. I mean, I don't know if I'd say you're retired because you're doing more writing than both of us professional writers are right now. And you're on the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. But how did both these ideas kind of come about for you?
Well, Leahy emanated out of the research I did for ESPN's the College Football 150. And, it was sort of noticing he had a record almost identical to Rockne, which I never really locked into. And yet it took him 13 tries to be elected to the College Football Hall of Fame, which essentially boiled down to the other coaches didn't like him. And that was another reason I wanted to start pulling on the thread. And I thought, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Notre Dame has a national fan base.
It helps me pay my mortgage, Ivan.
Yeah. And I thought, well, I need to, this is something that will appeal to a book publisher. And so the other thing was nobody's written really a word about Leahy. He died in 73. Wells Twombly's autobiography of Leahy came out in 74, and there's really not been a real book written about him in the next 50 years. Connor, not George, but his brother wrote Leahy's Lads, but that was really about the players. There were a couple of wonderful chapters about Leahy, but really hadn't been a book about him. So that was the reason for American Coach. Skull Session is the Scott Cochran book. Scott has 8 national championship rings from being on Saban and Kirby Smart's staffs. And he's got a really remarkable story to tell about leadership and motivation and recovery. And when he began to get on the other side of his addiction to Oxy, we talked about writing a book, and that was 3 years ago. And I didn't hear from him again until January. And he said, "Hey, I'm in, and let's do this." And I had unfortunately the publisher gave me till April 1st, so I had a rather hectic winter.
As you were researching for American Coach, I wonder if there were threads up in there that you pulled that were like, this is one of the reasons I love college football today, in the sense of like the sport is just so out there. Like I'm reading about Frank Leahy writing a letter to Father Kavanaugh asking for 33 scholarships and being rebuffed, and like there's just not another sport like it. So I said, what were some of your favorite anecdotes about Leahy and his relationship with Notre Dame and coaching, or even just like signing that contract with Boston College and then leaving like a week later? Like they were like, yeah, college football, it's as crazy as it's ever been. Like we think it's like this sport is totally off the rails in 2025, but like I'm reading about the sport in 1945, and I was like, yeah, it was just as crazy then it is now.
And maybe more so in the sense that in those days, in that era, there was no NFL that anybody cared about, and the NBA didn't start until after the war. So in terms of team sports, there was Major League Baseball and there was college football. And in terms of those two sports, there was the Yankees and there was Notre Dame. So my favorite anecdote, the one that was sort of I found it, was I was thinking, how can I connect the Yankees and the Irish? Is there a way to get Leahy connected to the Yankees? And sure enough, the 1952 season, Notre Dame opens at Penn, which was a national power then. And the Yankees clinched the American League pennant at the Philadelphia A's on the night before the game. Leahy went to the locker room before the game to hang out and say hello, and Red Smith was there. God bless, Notre Dame grad and the greatest writer of any and all generations. And he just told the story of what happened of a very young Mickey Mantle who had an Oklahoma football scholarship from Bud Wilkinson, but signed with the Yankees instead, telling Red just exactly what Oklahoma was going to do to Notre Dame later that year. And Red just smiled and said, "Well, why don't you go tell Coach Leahy?" And Mickey said, "I will." And he marched over there and was just as starstruck and meek as a 21-year-old guy could be. So that was, look, journalistically, finding the cache of columns that Red Smith wrote about Frank Leahy was one of the great joys of the research, because he was the best. And I finally, it was actually the guys at the Hesburgh Library told me that the New York Herald Tribune is digitized, and he just pulled them all out at once. And I was like, wanted to dance through the library.
You're from Alabama. You went to Stanford. You spent a lot of time working, I believe, at the Dallas Morning News. And yet you've just run a Notre Dame book. You've obviously wrote extensively about them throughout your storied career. What was it about the place that always kind of attracted you as far as a storyteller goes?
Well, it ruined my adolescence, as growing up in an Alabama house in the 70s. It just, Notre Dame broke my heart in several years. But when you come to campus, you understand. And I think really doing this level of research about Notre Dame and about the ancestors of Notre Dame, not the ancestors, but what Notre Dame was like 80, 90 years ago, and seeing the struggles of the university then to gain academic traction and to be taken seriously in a world that didn't want to take Catholics seriously, really made me understand a lot of what makes the university tick in in an ancestral sense. And that part of the research was really eye-opening and it just made me understand the university a lot better.
Yeah, I've always found that fascinating, like the independence part of this place, and like why that really actually tracks all the way back a century ago. And like you'll have Notre Dame fans who, are younger and be like, well, why don't they just join the Big Ten? And like a little more experienced Notre Dame fans will tell you like, well, it's because of Fielding Yost. And they're like, who's Fielding Yost?
Yeah.
Like that stuff still really tracks around here. And I'm not saying Notre Dame is the only interesting program to cover, but like I do think there are things about this place that are not replicable anywhere else. And like you could probably speak to that better than anyone, having covered the sport nationally. Like when you get to in the weeds with Notre Dame, do you just find like this actually doesn't happen anywhere else, these kinds of threads?
Oh yeah, no, just the fact that they were considered outsiders and Rockne played into that, and he went where his people were and went to the big cities, and the newspapers in the big cities ate that up. And all of a sudden, Notre Dame was the one national team in a regional sport. And that, I always thought of Notre Dame and the Big Ten as a rom-com where they never had the happy ending. They just, I'm ready, or I'm not. I'm ready, well, go to hell. And it was just, they never got on the same page at the same time. And maybe they will, maybe in the super conference era, but it's hard to imagine at this point why Notre Dame would do that, except to be, if the Big Ten and SEC go away or they become divisions in a 40-team entity, then, it might be a little more difficult for Notre Dame to stand outside, but they took lemons and they made, some just incredible lemonade out of it.
From the genesis of this idea to submitting the final copy to your publisher, how long does a project like this take, and how much more challenging is this type of project where you're essentially writing a biography of a guy who's long since deceased?
Yeah, I did have the thought a couple of times, I wish I had done this 20 years ago when the players were still alive. I did find one manager from his last team, Ed Kelly, who is alive and well in Sarasota and was a big help. And I sent Ed a book the other day. Was so happy, that he was saw it to the end with me. So that was hard. But on the other hand, if you can't talk to anybody, then you just go do something else. And the Notre Dame archive at the Hesburgh Library was really helpful. And then I just lived on newspapers.com. I must have entered the South Bend Tribune, the digitized version of the South Bend Tribune, literally thousands of times, but even other newspapers. And there are a lot of papers that aren't on newspapers.com, but there was this anecdote here, Pete, here's another anecdote. There was a story, it was just a mention in some features about Leahy that he had one professional or one legitimate or professional boxing fight. His dad wanted him to be a boxer. But nobody ever said anything with any details. They just he probably said I had one fight and nobody ever asked him, well, tell me about it. And he mentioned something in the Twombly book about it. And there were some other details somewhere, but finally somebody said it happened in O'Neill, Nebraska, which was actually his birthplace. Well, the O'Neill Frontier newspaper is on newspapers.com. So I typed in his boxing name, which he fought under an assumed name, which means, Frank Leahy violated. Actually, I don't know if there were NCAA rules, but in 1924, but he took his mother's maiden name and fought as Frank Kane. And there was one paragraph in the July 1924 edition of the O'Neill Frontier talking about a boxing card on July 4th. And there was one paragraph about Frank Kane winning his fight on a TKO. And I just thought I was so excited. I was like dancing around this office, that I found it, so that part was fun. The research was great fun, Matt. And then all of a sudden, like April of last year, I thought, I got to start writing, then it was less fun.
It's a dirty secret that writing never gets any easier, no longer how long you do it.
Yeah.
What, like, big picture with Leahy, how do you think he should be remembered versus how he is remembered based on like putting this book together and sort of just the kind of like the conclusions that you came to on your own?
Well, what I tried to convey, Pete, was just how big a deal Leahy was in his time. The cover of Time magazine was a national celebrity in the sense that he appeared on all the big radio shows of the day. You can find his appearance on the Jack Benny show on the internet, and it is actually funny. But Jack Benny show to me is still funny. Just the way how big of a celebrity he was. The year after he retired was one of the first equivalents of somebody did a Q rating, and he was listed, among Henry Fonda and Eleanor Roosevelt as someone that Madison Avenue wanted to, use as endorsers. Played golf with President Eisenhower. They were close. And then all of a sudden, it just all went away. And part of it was he couldn't go back to coaching because of his health. Part of it was he was a terrible businessman and got into a couple of businesses where he was taken advantage of, and they ended up sort of getting in the gray area of breaking financial laws. And he just sort of drifted away. And I wanted to convey what a good coach he was and what a big deal he was. And, he's not just a name in a record book.
What is it about you? And I worked with you for, I think, 6 years or so at ESPN, but like you always just had this knack for appreciation of history. ESPN 150, like great example,
Yeah.
right? Like the 10-part series that aired throughout 2019 was spearheaded by you. What is it about this sport that attracts you to those types of stories? And where did that start, probably as a young boy growing up in Alabama?
Oh, I just loved reading stories. I came from a family of storytellers. I think I got into this business just from sitting at the table after, the Thanksgiving meal, or after a Seder, or after Rosh Hashanah, and my dad and his siblings would just start telling stories about growing up in Mobile as the children of Eastern European immigrants. And they were all, they all knew how to tell a story. And I think I just absorbed that, ability, or at least the building blocks of ability. And I just like to read history. I can't. I'm good. My ability in math sort of ends at the earned run average. Spatially, I'm completely incompetent. My wife once said to me, "I just thought that I would marry somebody handier than I was," and I said, "So did I," and I did. This is what I know how to do and what I enjoy doing. So, this wall behind me of books are virtually, they're all sports books, but they're almost all college football books. And I just, through the years, collected them because I thought, you're going to need these at some point.
So a bit of a clunky segue from the past of college football to its present/future. You are on the college football playoff committee now.
I am. Yes.
What can you do to get 0-2 Notre Dame in?
Yes. You have to recuse yourself from Notre Dame and Stanford, I believe. But
Yes.
why did you want to do that? Because as you might have noticed, nobody seems to like anyone on the college football playoff committee ever.
Yeah, except when you ask them, well, what did they do wrong, or what result would you have changed? They don't have an answer for you.
Of course.
And I, look, I started covering this sport, for good in 1987. I remember the 90s. I remember when they came up with the BCS and we begged for a committee to make the choices, as the NCAA did in almost every other sport and still does. All the people complaining about the committee, what do they think March Madness, what do they think that is handed down on tablets, those schools from the sky? I mean, that's done by a committee, and we all love March Madness. I just think what I was apprehensive about was the workload, and now that I'm in the middle of the workload, I understand why I was apprehensive about it. I mean, the amount of data that we are provided to ingest is staggering, and I'm sitting here on Sunday and Monday watching games on my iPad, they called me to see if I was interested in interviewing, and I went downstairs and said to my wife, I don't know if I want to do that. That's a lot of work. And she looked at me very sweetly and said, what the beep is wrong with you? Of course you're going to do that. It's an honor. I went, yeah, okay, all right. So we've had 2 meetings, which were really get to know you meetings. I'm really impressed with the people on the committee and how they have welcomed me and the other new members. And, I got a call from one of them yesterday just to see how I was doing. And I said, I'm drowning. There's just so much to see and watch. And they were like, yeah. So, we meet in mid-October just to sort of set clear the decks and set the table for November. And then, the day after November 2nd is the first real meeting, or November 3rd, I guess.
What, I mean, you're recused from Notre Dame and Stanford. Can you just explain what that means from a practical sense? Basically, you got to leave the room when. Well,
it used to be leave the room. This year it's new. It's called, it's a partial.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, which means I can participate in the discussions, or I can even be, it's at least be there for the discussions. But when I go to vote, I can't vote for Stanford, my alma mater, or Notre Dame, just because because the book came out, really. And I said to them, I've written this book about Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman wrote an endorsement of the book. What do you want me to do? And they said, well, let's back off this year and we'll reassess next year. So, I'm fine with that. And, my dream is in my 3 years on the committee that my being, not able to vote for Stanford will come into play before.
They got to win this year. Notre Dame doesn't.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, in fact, the Notre Dame game ended and I flipped over and BC was ahead 17-6 and it was 11:45. And I was like, I'm not doing this. And I went to bed. Yeah.
Well, before we let you go, you're going to be on campus Thursday.
Yes.
At 4:00 at the Hammis bookstore for kind of a Q&A and book signing. And then also this weekend, Saturday before the Purdue game, it's 11:30 a.m. more of a book signing there. But I guess just talk about what it's going to be like to come back and be at Notre Dame with the Notre Dame Book of American Coach ready to go.
I don't know. I mean, I'm really excited to be there and to talk about the book and to sort of beat the drum for Frank Leahy, and I have had some of his family. We're going to try to connect this weekend on campus, and some of the sons and of his former assistants, or I don't know who I'm going to run into, but I've been talking to people and telling them I'm going to be there. And if this weekend goes well, maybe I'll be able to come back another Saturday during the season. I don't know, but I am excited to show up and my favorite thing about this cover is the fedora. I love the fedora. The sepia is good, but I just wanted to sort of bring up the resonance of the 40s and Leahy and Notre Dame then, and bring him back.
Really quickly before you go, you've covered a lot of games, a lot of coaches there. What's like your most memorable from your day job? Your most memorable moment covering Notre Dame?
Oh, I've got to be it's got to be the SC game in 2005. Although the Tennessee game with the great comeback, I think of. But no, it's the build up to the Bush push, and then the fourth quarter of that game. If you were there, you just don't. It's not something you forget. It was really special.
I thought for sure you'd say Catholics versus convicts.
Yeah, no, I was there, and oddly enough, what I remember about that game is driving back to Chicago after the game and hearing Kirk Gibson hit his home run.
Yes.
Jack Buck's call, which is iconic, and it was so exciting that I was screaming in the car by myself, on the toll road driving west. But yeah, I mean, I remember that. I remember my first game, which was the beatdown of Alabama, which in 1987, 87, which I covered, that sort of signaled, hey, Lou Holtz might be doing something here. And I remember that just because it was my first time on campus. But yeah, I was there for the last game of the old press box, which was a shutout of Rutgers.
The old press box.
I was going to say, we were there for the last game of the old press box.
Oh yeah, excuse me, the old press box, and we all, the world's smallest and scariest elevator to that old press box. Like we walked the stairs to that press box. That's how bad that elevator was, because it was like, no, I'm not getting in that thing. But it was. And it's wonderful to think now that was a 60,000 seat stadium, and we thought, what could be better? And then it's pretty good at 80,000 too.
They do a good job. Well, Ivan, we appreciate you coming on the show, share some Notre Dame memories, and talk about American Coach. I learned a ton. I don't pretend to be like the biggest Notre Dame history buff. Other than I knew Frank Leahy's house is like 2 blocks from my house on the south side of South Bend.
Nice.
But yeah, it was a great read. I learned a ton, and it definitely explained a lot about like probably why more people don't know more about Frank Leahy, which is, I think, kind of one of the fascinating themes of the book. So Ivan, thanks everyone for coming on The Independent. Best of luck with the book, and hopefully we'll run into you this weekend before Purdue.
Thanks so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
We're back. Let me figure out the box here. We've got new designs here in case you couldn't tell.
Yeah, well, Matt figures it out. Thank you to one of our major sponsors, Roback.com, RHOBACK.com. Promo code Irish for 20% for your first order. Hoodies, quarter zips, polos, shorts, joggers, workout shirts, dog bandanas, hats, everything you need at Roback.com. That's RHOBACK.com. Promo code Irish for 20% off your first order.
And thanks to our friends at Obvious Shirts, OBVIOUSSHIRTS.com. Great pod merch, t-shirts, quarter zips, hoodies, crew necks, and more. Thank you to all you fans for your support. Thanks to our friends at Obvious Shirts for being a proud partner of The Independent. We'd also like to thank one of our newest sponsors, DraftKings. The rivalries, the marching bands, the upsets. Saturdays just got way more fun. College football is back. Think you know the game? Put your knowledge to the test with DraftKings Sportsbook and turn your picks into big payouts. With live betting, rivalry week odds boosts, and more, DraftKings Sportsbook has everything you need to own every Saturday, including this weekend's Notre Dame line, which is down to 24.5 against Purdue with an over-under of 54.5. And here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code INDEPENDENT. That's code INDEPENDENT for new customers. Get $300 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. In partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-97777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, fees may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
All right,
Shall we get to the question?
Yeah, let's get to some questions.
Dan Brockburn. Nice profile picture with the CFP logo on the helmet. Season isn't over, regardless of the playoffs or not. We have 10 more games of our favorite team. Bring on the Boilers. Is that a Marcus Freeman pump-up speech at a press conference? Or no? We learned last year, sometimes the hard way. It isn't over. That's one other thing I want to add. By the way, when we were talking about the top of the show, when we were talking about the defense and the struggles, talked to someone very close to the program yesterday, and he said, "Matt, go back to last regular season. Who were the two best offenses they played? USC, 35 points. Louisville, 24 points. They couldn't stop them last year either, and they had one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, if not the best by definition." Which was interesting. He's like, "But you better hold the Purdue's of the world to 7 and do that the rest of the year if you're gonna have an elite defense," which they did last year. And in the playoff, obviously against Georgia and Indiana, and Penn State when it mattered most, they were able to make those stops. But it was interesting. I had not, like, you look at when you have a season as long and as thrilling as last year's was, you forget a lot of the smaller parts, especially the bad parts of it outside of the NIU. And it's like, you're not wrong. I never really thought of it. And they had a lot better players on last year's defense than they do this year's, but it's interesting.
It's a fair point. I think it was one of my biggest reason for concern with Ohio State is like the two times they played like legit passing attacks. Not that they got shredded, but they looked very mortal. I don't know if Miami and A&M. Well, A&M's receivers were outstanding, but you shouldn't be giving up they could have given up 550 yards to Marcel Reed. Like, that's not an exaggeration, I don't think. So yeah, that's to come back against Purdue. This question is from P Sampson 27. Matt, like, how many points in yards do you think Notre Dame would have to give up for people to feel not terrible about Chris Ash?
I was scrolling through to see who that was before it hit me. How many points in yards? I'm
not saying like people are like, yes, great hire, but just like,
no, but when you're 0-2, like,
turn the temperature down on it.
Yes, to turn the temperature down, you need to dominate in these games.
Okay. So like
What's
7?
That look like? Yeah, like, don't give up 2 touchdowns.
Okay.
I think that's reasonable. And I do think there's some talent on this Purdue roster, but I think that's reasonable in the sense of, hey, okay, we may have turned a corner here. We may feel better. And look, if it's, Northwestern had a nice backdoor against Oregon last week, 34-14 in a 34-0 game with like 4 minutes left. Like, that to me is fine. 2 real touchdowns. In that sense. By the way, that line was 30.5 last week. It went down to 28.5 after the A&M game, and now it's been bet all the way down to 24.5, which, I say stay away, period, because I'd like to see his team win a football game before I say bet money on them. But like, that is low for, they beat these guys by 59 last year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would not do anything with this game from a DraftKings point of view, but
we're both 0-2, by the way, with our picks so far this year.
yeah, boy,
At least
really
I'm
killing
0-2 with the unders.
Yeah. I remember going on our friend Tim Murray's a VSiN show, and they're like, "So what do you like?" And I was like, for A&M, I was like, "I love the under. I just don't see any way this game goes over at all." Which I think it was over at halftime. But yeah, I sort of view it as like with you, one touchdown, unless the second one it's 35-7 and it comes with 2 minutes left in the game. Midway through the fourth quarter, it's got to be one touchdown. And if the second touchdown happens, it's got to be against backups, or it's got to be like just a fluky, inconsequential play. And I don't think any of that will indicate something has been solved with the defense, but it's kind of the cliche of like, you can't win until you stop losing. Like, just stop losing on defense, and then we'll see where you can go.
It's funny because, like, I think back to the Miami of Ohio game last year as one of those like games, right? Where like,
Yeah,
I don't feel good about it, even though they won by a lot, But last year's problems were so much different from this year's problems, as far as like,
yeah, they were on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, so it was on the passing game, and now it's on the defensive passing game, and yeah, I'd like to. The offense made, I think, significant strides in week 2. Need to see the defense make similar strides in week 3 at the very least. It's I'm still perplexed at like everything we just watched the last 2 weeks from that side of the ball. By the way, Marcus Freeman's September home record.
Ooh, it's not good.
It's about 500. I'll give you that.
Yeah, that's not good. Yeah, because we got Marshall, Northern Illinois, Ohio State, Texas A&M. Am I missing one in there?
No. Well, he's lost one he's 5-4. He's lost one every year in September.
Yeah, it's not good.
No. And, there's been a lot of commentary about the playoff and scheduling, as there always is. And, some will look at this as a referendum on Notre Dame and why you got to be smarter about scheduling, yada, yada, yada. The numbers we just recited, I think, are proof positive that, like, it doesn't matter. Like, last year looked pretty easy with Northern Illinois week 2, didn't it? 2022 looked pretty easy with Marshall week 2, didn't it? Like, Notre Dame almost won both these games. They didn't. We'll see if they can rattle off 10 wins in a row for the second year in a row. I don't know. I probably wouldn't bet on that happening. But I don't look at this as like, see, this is why you don't schedule. Dabo said that. Did you see Dabo said that about LSU?
No, guy. I mean,
yeah. He was like, this is why you don't play those games, because all that negativity makes our kids press when we lose. It's just like, what?
What happens if you win them, Dabo?
Yeah.
Like, what
by the way, LSU seems to be pressing, and they've won.
When Notre Dame won at Texas A&M last year, was anyone like, see, this is why you don't play these games? Yeah. No. Nobody says that. I hate that. I hate that Lincoln Riley logic of just like, there should be only upside to winning these games, no negativity at all. Like, because who would want that? Like, we should just go out and beat Southwest Missouri State. Like, just stop with that.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. Josh Scoresby, what are your thoughts on the crowd Saturday? Felt like it was as loud or louder than OSU 2 years ago, with presumably fewer ND fans. Looked like more A&M fans were there compared to that OSU game. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think there were more A&M fans than Ohio State fans. I also thought Notre Dame. You don't think so?
I didn't come away thinking that was the case, and maybe it's just like maroon is hard to pick out and scarlet is not.
That's what I thought at kickoff. I didn't really notice it, but then like, we heard them a lot, and we heard their chants a lot. And
I mean, there were a good number of A&M fans there, but I guess I didn't think it was.
I don't remember much from Ohio State other than like remember, I mean, you did the story, right? Keep the
I think it was like 80-20.
For Ohio State or for this?
For Ohio State.
Oh, I was gonna say this. I think was more like 70-30, but I thought the Notre Dame fans who were there, that was as loud as I've heard that place.
Yeah, I thought it was a great crowd, great atmosphere. I mean, it felt like a home game for Notre Dame, regardless of how many A&M fans were there.
Beefeater and ND08, any clarification on the comms being compromised, or was it just CJ tipping the plays? I didn't hear it. Was there something on communication?
No, I think that maybe the communication. No, it wasn't like a headset issue.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was just the CJ Carr's stance, whether his feet are parallel or his feet are staggered, was a tell for a run. If it was parallel, tell for a pass. If it was staggered. I actually talked to a couple former Notre Dame quarterbacks about this week because I was like, is this a big deal? And they're like, kind of like it's like not a great look, but not a huge deal because it's easy to fix. And like this happens, I think this is something that happens way more than we would have any idea about. We just rarely have people tip us off to it.
I guess Ryan Harris apparently noticed it on the broadcast live.
Yeah, that's what I had seen that on Twitter. I talked to Ryan this week, but I'm not sure that came up. But yeah, Carr threw for 300 yards when A&M presumably knew his passing. If I was A&M, I'd be a little disappointed with how poorly my defense played if I knew what was run or knew what was passed. Now, maybe it let them tee off on Love and Price in the run game more than they would have been able to. I mean, just because Carr threw for a bunch of yards doesn't mean it's irrelevant. Somebody did ask quarterbacks coach Gino Guidugli yesterday about it, and basically he gave yes, there are some tendencies. It's been addressed. We're moving on. I didn't really think it affected us. Like, okay. I don't, but there was something there for sure. I went back and totaled up the stats on it. And I think on roughly 90% of the plays, Carr's stance told you correctly whether it was going to be a run or a pass.
UCLA just fired their defense coordinator, Ikaka Malo. They also just fired their head coach right before that. So that's interesting thing. But defense coordinators do get fired 3 games in, is my point when I say that.
It took me a second to figure out where you were going with that.
4 games in last time, but that was a few years ago. Josh Scoresby adds, perhaps due to the alcohol sales in the stadium this time around. I forgot that was
Could be
a first. Dan Brockman got to witness an absolute college football classic in person. I feel fortunate. Positive way of looking at it. Wanted a W. Yeah, it was. I guess you could call it a classic. It was a great game. It was a very memorable game.
And I think if I was for Notre Dame fans, I totally hear what Dan's saying. Like, that was an awesome game if you can remove yourself from the result a little bit. But I feel like it's the troubling part for me is like, if Notre Dame had lost 21-20, I would feel better about where Notre Dame was today than if they lost 41-40. Because it just, you gotta have your defense travel with you to Arkansas, to Boston, to Pittsburgh. You gotta bring it for USC, and like getting a defense that will travel and be consistent week in and week out. Like that's the part that I'm just like, man, I don't know if Notre Dame's gonna get there.
Mark Downs, I remember both Freeman and Golden struggled to get the defense humming. And that was also brought up to me this week. I mean not to this extent, but
I'll buy that. Like,
I do some.
Remember the Ohio State game? Like,
no, but the Freeman DC era was not great to start.
Oh, I mean, yeah, okay. So yes, I agree with the Freeman part.
Florida State and Toledo both
bad.
probably should have won those
bad.
games. And then Golden, I'll give you Ohio State, but like they lost to Marshall.
Yeah, they did lose to Marshall. I'm not sure I would put that down to the defense.
It wouldn't be the first scapegoat, but they still gave up too many points.
I suppose. I don't know. I look at, they did. I mean, I'm thinking back to like some safety miscues in that game that killed them at the end. But like, this is what's going on with Chris Ash is beyond not humming. Like, I think that really undersells how bad the defense is right now.
I would agree. And you do a good job of getting some of those screen grabs and overhead shots of like, they don't all seem to be on the same page here.
No,
and that's the part
you see a lot of the international symbol for like, I don't know what I'm doing is I don't know. Like you there's way too many palms up situations out there. Like, and even after the snap, you'll see guys pointing, you go there, and it's just a sign of not everyone knowing what they're doing.
Josh Scoresby, ND beats both Miami and A&M if they play again in December. This is how I'm processing both losses. I mean, they were both close games. It's not like
why not
to say that, but I feel better about A&M than I would. I'd feel better about being A&M than I would Miami.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Although it's, if they went against Miami again and CJ Carr had 12 starts, like let's say this this is a playoff game, like Josh is sort of intimating here. If Notre Dame played Miami in a neutral site, I would like CJ Carr to throw for pushing 300 yards.
Who's going to catch those passes, though? I mean,
I actually like Notre Dame's receivers a lot. I do think that it's a talented group, not just a talented for Marcus Freeman group. I think it's a talented group. Like, I think Malachi Fields is a dude. I love where Fort Faison is right now. I mean, Great House that's a bit frustrating, but I would love to see Notre Dame Miami Part 2. I think that would be a great game. And I think CJ Carr would play well in it, whereas the first time around, he was kind of holding on for dear life, and Mike Denbrock was holding on for dear life with his call sheet.
We'll see. I mean, I think Malachi Toney and Miami's receivers will probably improve a lot between now and then as well. And I haven't
seen
a
lot of truth from that too.
Notre Dame's secondary. A lot of the same repetitive questions here. Brian Carney, great interview. Definitely going to check this book out. Sounds fascinating for a long time suffering Irish fan. It's interesting. I mean, just hearing Ivan, you read it. I'm still waiting on my copy, Ivan, but not Ivan, his publicist. But it is interesting just hearing Ivan in that interview contextualize just how forgotten this great coach really is. Like, you hear his name when they played BC, the Leahy Bowl. Like, you don't hear it to the extent of Rocknear era.
No, and it's, I mean, like, there is a Leahy gate and there's a Leahy statue, but I think having him on the same plane as Lou Holtz or Eric Parsegian or Dan Devine, like, probably does him a disservice considering what his record and national championship count is.
I would agree. Josh Gorsby again, would 10 straight wins this year be more impressive than last year's run, given this year's remaining schedule? It's presumably harder. I mean, in a word, yes. Some ways, doing it 2 years in a row, and I know it's not the completely same personnel, but that's also impressive in a roundabout way. But yeah, I think it'd be more impressive. Like, I don't think they would have gotten in the playoff last year at 10-2. This year, we can't know that for certain until, we get later in the season with more data, but I think they would probably be in.
I think so too.
Part of that is last year's team, right? Oh, Notre Dame, like, they made a run when we let them in last year, so we know they're good.
Yeah.
That's sorry, Ivan, but like, you guys are gonna subconsciously think that.
Well, I think also, if Miami and A&M are good, like, I'm not even saying they need to be great. Let's say they both go 10-2. Like, that's going to look pretty good for Notre Dame. If Notre Dame's 10-2, A&M's 10-2, Miami's 10-2. I'm not saying Notre Dame's getting in over Miami or A&M, which could be an issue. There's only so many bids to go around. But if Miami wins the ACC, I think Notre Dame would be in great shape to make it a 10-2. Would it be more impressive than last year? I don't know. I mean, like, speaking of things you forget that Army and Navy were both top 25 games.
Yeah, but
there was still, like, going to the Navy game, there's like, well, I don't know, this might be a plucky Navy team. We're like, no, they got
they handed the ball 6 times.
Yeah. USC was coming on by the end of the year. Like, that was a legit game. I think Louisville was probably better than what I realized. Louisville lost to Stanford last year, but still, like, Louisville played up for Notre Dame. So I think it would be really impressive if they went 10-2. I think it would be more impressive than the 10-game win streak last year.
Bernie Coderi. Ash is going to need 621.7 not to look like they're auditioning for the next Three Stooges movie. Yeah, I'm with you, Pete. I almost feel like Christian Gray is just, like, gutting it out at this point. We've seen him get banged up now in back-to-back games and not really take a break. I have to imagine something else going on there. Carson Hobbs, you mentioned the potential personnel move. Jalen Stroman, both him and Devontae Smith, who we only got really half a game of at Miami, I think have been disappointing in the grand scheme of things, just with that veteran presence coming from, well, in one case, an elite program. Virginia Tech, I'm not sure I'd put on that pedestal right now, but that part has been disappointing. But Adon Schuler came out for interviews last night. I know he's the captain, and we've we're harping on this all off season. Like I'm very curious to see how the leadership group responds to everything, right? And maybe we'll get to see some of this in December when they release the Peacock series. But like you saw it last year, even after the fact, like Marcus Freeman's meetings with these guys had a voice. These guys really did a good job with everything, whether it was bouncing back from NIU or figuring out how to handle Jada Mickey transferring, out of nowhere. Like it was very, very cohesive. I'm not saying it's not right now, but again, we're not talking about any flat out superstars right now who are captains. Jack Kaiser, I was told last year, would help his teammates with their NIL taxes. Like that's how involved he was.
Because he graduated first in his accounting program.
Exactly. But to Drake Bowen, I don't know. Probably not. He probably hasn't graduated yet. But like, I don't know if you got those guys who are going the extra mile. We've mentioned the Joe Schmidt examples from 2015. I don't know. I think it's hard to do that when you haven't played as much football and you haven't proven as much on the field. And most of these guys haven't, with the exception of, to some extent, Schuler and Emil Wagner. I mean, I just think that creates a very, very difficult dynamic for everybody as you try to get out of a hole that you're in right now.
I think that there are significant differences between player-led teams and coach-led teams. Last year, Notre Dame had a player-led team. Marcus Freeman has said this already, like in camp, like this was a coach-led team. That's not what he wants the team to be, but like, I think one of the interesting narratives to follow with this team is like, how does Marcus Freeman figure out what this team needs, when it needs it, what levers to pull, what buttons to push? I thought Freeman was on a heater all of last year after Northern Illinois. So it's like, all right, well, I wouldn't have said that going to Purdue, that he was like, he knew exactly what the team needed. It took him a couple weeks, but how does he figure out what this team needs? I don't know. That would be an interesting question to sort of mine with him a little bit in the weeks to come.
You need that. I mean, especially Notre Dame, though. Like, I just feel like if you don't have that, you don't have a chance. And by not having a chance, I mean a chance to have a special season. You've made the reference of, what did the coaching staff tell recruits about playoff teams as far as their talent rank?
Oh, yeah. They felt like they were 6th or 7th.
And that's probably true. Like, what?
I just said 6-7 inadvertently. Sorry.
Oh.
You don't have a teenage boy.
I'm very confused right now.
6-7? No, it's not. You're not doing anything with that? Okay. All right. Moving along.
6, another number. I'm more. Anyway, I thought you were saying they're going to go 6 and 7 this year.
No.
Okay. So that one went right over my head. Maybe the commenters picked up on it. Now I'm. So if they are 6th or 7th most talented among the elite of the elite, how do you bridge that gap? And if they're less talented this year than they were last year, which at least among the starting group on defense, they probably are, how do you bridge that gap? Like, you don't do it just through coaching.
No. Yeah, the players have to do it.
You could come out here and say, look how close we were against Miami. Look how close we were at A&M. This thing isn't broken. And that's all true. You're a play away in both games from winning. But when you lose those games, especially back to back, I think that speaks to like the other 363 days of the year much more than it does what happened in those 60 minutes on the field each time.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is already baked in, right? Like if we're talking about a 365-day a year sport or at least from January 1 to December 31, like a lot of those days have already passed. So I don't know how much you can change now in terms of just like the leadership and kind of where things are going that way.
Daniel Grimm. Obviously, we're stuck with Chris Ash for at least, by the Grimm. This is a fitting comment for someone with your last name. Obviously, we're stuck with Chris Ash for at least the next 10 games, Womp. If the defense doesn't improve, that's his Womp, not mine for those listening on iTunes. If the defense doesn't improve, do we see a new play caller at some point? If so, would Freeman even publicize that? I don't think he would come out and say it.
Yeah,
I think he'd say like, hey, we're collaborating or something.
New play caller, yes. Would he publicize it? No.
Do you think it would be him?
Oh,
I do, but
I think it probably would be him. I think there's a world where like maybe Mike Mickens gets a shot at it. Maybe, I don't know.
But that's even riskier if you ask me.
But there, is he going to publicize it? Absolutely not. I think the first step in this is Ash, you're our DC. We're running this stuff, not like cut out 80% of what you're doing. Let's focus. Let's keep this very vanilla today and just like have the best vanilla game plan of all time. Do that. Let's start there.
I know there were a ton of BVG memes and references, and I understand that. The big difference between then and now is you have a head coach with a defensive background who's heavily involved with the defense. Whereas I think Brian Kelly was, at least pre-2017, way too trusting of everyone around him.
Yes.
And I think he looked over at that side of the ball once BVG got fired and was like, wait, you guys have been doing what? For how long? You laugh, but I'm pretty sure that's how it went down.
Yes.
And it's not that case here.
No.
John Kohler, given how Notre Dame started in 2022 with new DC Al Golden and 2 bad losses early, do you think we as a fan base are overreacting in the context of coming off a natty run? I think your last part answers your question. I think because you're coming off a natty run, you're not overreacting. Like, you're supposed to be beyond this at this point. You had a first-time head coach in 2022, very, very young, a DC who had not had a lot of success at the college level in a long time. Understand the frustration then, but it was also like, yeah, this was a risky hire. These were both risky hires. Whereas here, I think Notre Dame is a program that's beyond excuses right now based on the success they had last year.
No, I'm with you on that. Like the bad. So you mentioned the Marshall game. Notre Dame gave up 364 yards, and they were -3 in turnover margin. You could say it's on the defense to not create turnovers. That's fair. Against Stanford, they gave up 385 yards. They were -2 in turnover margin. Again, if you want to say it's on the defense that they weren't even, you could do that. But this defense isn't creating turnovers and is giving up a ton of yards. So I don't know. I was very inclined to give Ash the benefit of the doubt after Miami. And then A&M happened, and I feel like that all just evaporated.
Me too. You could also, if you really want to get technical, blame the same person for Marshall and Texas A&M, who's on the offensive and special team side of the ball, as NBC clearly did with their camera work. Bernie Coderi, what is messed up is A&M were using CJ Carr's tippy of the plays. In poker game, you'll get shot in the Old West for cheating. All right. It's a little harsh. Let me tell you about Michigan, buddy. Bernie, again, if an SEC defense can't stop an Irish offense when they know if the play is run or pass, pray for Purdue. Should probably pray for Purdue anyway, based on what they went through last year when they played in-state schools. But I would agree.
We should have Father Nate back on the show to tell us how to do that.
We should have him on until they win. I mean, I think that only makes sense. Aaron Short, would there be any point down the road where vets on the defense get so frustrated in a game with Ash in the scheme that's confusing them and start calling their own game? Joking, obviously, but I think there's some programs you might see that happen. I don't think it would be here.
Yeah,
again, you know it when you see it. Like, as far as like, yeah, they don't understand it.
Yeah.
Jay Carr. Oh God, that's a picture. That is a picture. For those listening, Brian Van Gorder pointing to his head on both sides with fire in his eyes. Jay Carr, don't know if it's related to CJ Carr. Does ND need to increase the amount of corners they are recruiting, including the portal, year in and year out? All the depth is basically freshmen since they recruited 2 a year. Bell, BMO, and Mickey gone. Go ahead.
They got 3 last year. And they've recruited, I think, pretty well at the position. Like Kari Adams, the East Coast corner, that guy I think is a stud. I think safety and corner, you should always sign one more than you need. Like that, those are over-signing positions to me, along with defensive end. So, yeah. So the answer is, yeah, they should probably sign more than what they're signing, but I think they're already sort of moving in that direction.
My only counter to that would be, look at some of the best corner stories they've had since Freeman took over. True freshman, Benjamin Morrison, 2022 against Ohio State. Leonard Moore last year coming in for Benjamin Morrison when we thought the world was going to fall apart without him, and Moore ends up being an All-American caliber player and probably the best player in that defense right now. So I do think they've recruited well. The grad transfer hit rate, I would say, is a little shakier. Nothing bad.
Now it is.
Yeah,
I mean, this year it does not look good.
I'm waiting for someone in that building to call up me and you, and maybe they already have you, and blame all this on Chad Bowden because that's coming. But it hasn't happened, at least with me yet. But yeah, I do think the grad transfer rate in the secondary has been so far. Pete, this one's you. Jay Carr again. Even Pete knows a 6'7" meme. Question mark. Wow.
Again, I
feel
have
so not cool right now.
teenagers in my house, and I was
Wait,
watching.
wow, there are more. JG 6'7" joke on the pod.
I was watching the Clemson Georgia Tech game, and Bob Wischusen made 2 clear 6'7" references, but they were very subtle. And my son was like, "Whoa, 6'7". So yeah.
Wait, give me something here.
I don't even know. It doesn't mean anything anymore. It just is like, I think it came from like a Skrillex song, and then somehow like a Ball brother was involved. I don't really know, but now it just doesn't mean anything. It's just like, if you can figure out a way to work 6'7" into a sentence, you should do it around teenagers because they'll think you're hilarious or terrible. Either,
right.
Maybe both at the same time.
My entire pop culture life right now is K-pop Demon Hunters. That's
Okay.
it. There's no room for anything else. Brian Carney, if you want to change a topic for a second, favorite Robert Redford movie. I think the only one I could recall off the top of my head is All the President's Men. I've actually not seen The Natural. I need to do that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great one.
What's
your
favorite?
The Natural was great.
Brian,
must see movie.
All of his here. Daniel Graham LOLing at the joke about my last name. Even my wife enjoyed it. Here's hoping for a less grand rest of the season. Oh, wait. Oh. Archer 00 Arrow. My wife teaches middle school, and both my kids are in middle school, so I can't escape 6'7", but it's so much better than just about anything else.
That's true. Like, of all the annoying things kids say, 6'7" is actually one of the least annoying.
I have a college-age brother who drops new slang on me every single time I see him, and then just says, "Look it up, bro," whenever I ask him what it means. And it's usually not great, but I have not gotten to 6'7" yet. On that note, we've gone 21 minutes past, I think, what we initially budgeted for, since we have so many cool kid memes in here that are going above my head. It is. Oh, wait, we need to make predictions.
Yes. So I like Notre Dame, but I picked Notre Dame to win the first 2 games, so take that with a grain of salt. I think Purdue is much better than probably Notre Dame fans realize. If you look at their box score against USC, I think they lost 33-17, but they were -3 in turnovers. That included allowing a pick 6 and throwing an interception in the end zone. And I think USC also converted 4 fourth downs in the game. So the box score did not scream 16-point loss. I still think Notre Dame should eventually cruise to the finish line here. It won't look like Purdue last year. It might look a little bit too much like Miami last year. So I'll go 31-13. I think it could be an angsty crowd if Purdue scores in the first quarter, but I think that Notre Dame's figured out some things offensively, and that makes, I don't want to say that it removes the margin, like increases the margin for error, but I think it does. Like, I think Notre Dame's just going to be able to score too many points when it needs it for Purdue to hang.
So that Purdue game, the Purdue USC game, I mean, good for them for hanging. There's 3-hour lightning delay there. Like,
there was that too. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything good or bad from both teams you can pull from that game and, try to read into too much. Like, they did what they did, and that was that. I do think this is a much better Purdue team. I think Barry Odom is a phenomenal coach, and I like his staff a lot. I'll go Notre Dame 42-21. I think Notre Dame's going to have its way on offense and going to be able to do a lot with CJ Carr and with that running game as well. Defensively, I'm very much now in believe it when I see it mode. Josh Henson, the OC from Purdue, comes from USC last year. I imagine he's going to air it out a lot. Devin Maccabee's arguably their best offensive player at running back, and he, I think, had 2 yards per carry against USC's defense last week in that weather. So, I mean, I do think Purdue's going to air it out as they traditionally have pre-Ryan Walters, and I think they'll have a little bit of success early, but they're not going to be able to keep up with Notre Dame.
Yeah. Nitro Tuggle, like one of the receivers, he was a big time recruit from this area. I think went to Georgia and then transferred up there. So, I mean, it's not as talented as they were last year, but man, they're a lot better coached and a lot more just sort of competently operating than they were at this time last year.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, for all the 6-7 memes you can think of, for Pete Sampson, for myself, and thank you to Ivan Maisel for joining us. Please continue to subscribe to The Independent on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Thanks for all the great questions again today. We will see you guys post-game Saturday and again in the same spot live next Wednesday for our midweek show. That's Pete. I'm Matt. Thanks as always for watching The Independent.